there, everyone. Welcome to another presentation by TLC, Transition Life Consultants. We are so lucky to have them speaking today. Another mental health topic for us. This has been really tough during the pandemic, and we're so grateful to the partnership bringing these great topics to our contacts here in the villages and surrounding areas. Just so you know, this is the #1 attended program that we've had. People are really interested in this topic, so we're really excited to have you here with us. Again, my name is Lisa Honka, and I am a senior living advisor. I have a company called Your Key to Senior Living Options, and we've been partnering with TLC for the last 4 months on different mental health topics. And we'll show you how you can look at some of the past archives of the topics that we've been partnering with them on. So Bonnie, if you'd like to introduce Elaine, we're so excited about this topic today.
Thank you, Lisa. So I'm Bonnie Hovel, and I'm with TLC Services, and we are a volunteer organization of around 20 people who volunteer our services to help people with mental health issues. And we have training, we have support groups for things like caregiver issues. We give presentations like this one on many topics, and we provide one-on-one counseling. And all these are free of charge, but we do ask for donations, and we will bring that up again at the end. But I am happy to introduce today our speaker, who is Elaine Stipetich, and she will tell you a little bit about herself when we get started. Thank you.
Okay, my name's Elaine, and I thought I'll just tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a licensed social worker. Actually was licensed in Kansas, Illinois, and Wisconsin, and now in Florida. I worked for about 25 years doing therapy in a mental health clinic, and that was my part-time job, and 30 years for the Department of Corrections as a agent and a field supervisor, and also I became involved in therapy while I was in corrections, although it wasn't required on my job. I worked with sex offenders and with batterers and with all types of offenders. I think my big claim to fame is that I once had lunch with Jeffrey Dahmer in the prison, in the same lunchroom at the next table. And was very disappointed that somebody killed him the next week because I wanted to use my process on him. Anyway, so also I was a psychiatric social worker before that. So I'll tell you a little bit about how my program evolved. I was able to attend some training in 1992 with Jack Bush, who was a psychologist and a philosopher in Vermont. And he presented the basic foundation that my program is based on. And I've used this program, which is a self-change program, for all different kinds of groups. I have done a depression group, a group for sex offenders, a group for batterers, a group for people that just have a behavior that they say to themselves, why do I keep doing that over and over and over again, even though the consequences are not good? So the title of what I'm going to present today is What I Think in My Mind Controls My Life. And I'm going to kind of say, talking more about what this means in hopes that by the end of this presentation, you will be able to know what that implies. if I could get the next slide. This is a cognitive intervention program. It's based on cognitive behavioral therapy, cognitive intervention. Now, the word cognitive means thinking or the process of thinking, and intervention is to interrupt or change problem thoughts. Okay. Next slide. So what is a thought? I would say this is one of the key components to the program, is for you to understand, if you are doing one of the groups, what is a thought? Well, a thought is a statement that you say to yourself in your mind. They say that we have about 70,000 thoughts go through our head every day. Now, some of those thoughts may not be that significant. Some of them may be, I'm hungry. I wonder when this is going to be over. I wonder what this is all about. So they may just be random thoughts that come and go. But other thoughts are more powerful and have more of an effect on our feelings and our behaviors. So what we hear is her thoughts about being in the subway and about the subway car suddenly stalling, and nobody is announcing anything. Nobody's giving her any information as to what's going on. And you hear her say, "Oh, what's going on here? Oh, I feel something on my leg. What is that? Oh, please, can't you just tell us what's going on?" And so you hear her dialogue of her thoughts as she thinks them. She never says anything in the tape, but it's all just a repetition of her thoughts. And I know in our program, as we did our various lessons to teach people, we would have tapes like this to demonstrate different concepts. And I wish we would have had this when I did the program initially, because it's so easy to understand and, you know, and to know what you're talking about thinking. And the other thing, the other way to know if it's a thought is, if you remember, like when you used to read the funny paper, the cartoons, and you would have this little bubble or cloud above the person's head. And so you would see the thought as they were thinking it. The other thing we tell people in how to pay attention to their thoughts is, if we were to put a tape recorder in your head and we were to tape the thought as it went through your head, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about you not judging your thoughts, you not telling about your thoughts, or you not justifying them, just telling us your thoughts as they go through your head. Now, the reason it's so important to understand about thinking is that we all think in an individual way. And so because we're all individuals, nobody thinks exactly like anybody else. Your life experiences that have brought you to this point have resulted in you having a unique way of thinking. The cognitive process, let's see, what the next slide. The cognitive process is to listen to your thoughts. Now, the other important thing about thoughts is when they come through our heads, we believe them. We never stop to say, well, what is my evidence that that thought is true? And so some of our thoughts are based on truths, half-truths, and even distortions, so that you could see how it might be a problem when you understand that these thoughts may not be necessarily true, but we believe them and we act upon them as if they are true just because we think them. So we learn how to listen to our thoughts, to pay attention to ourselves. If we have some situations that are high risk for us, like, you know, there's a behavior that we wish we wouldn't do, we have to pay attention to our thinking in that situation in order to understand how we can make changes in the end. Then we write them down, we listen to them, we write them down, and then we evaluate how they are affecting our life. Now, we do not judge thoughts. We do not say that thought is right, wrong, good, or bad. We just say, what does that thought lead you to do? And so you have to be like, we're very objective about thoughts. We don't even see thoughts positive or negative. It's just that how does this thought make you feel, and what does it lead you to do? So the next slide. Okay, this is our thinking cycle that we have in the program. And so because we have this thinking cycle, we have up here situations and or events. And, you know, it's not the event that causes your feelings. It's not the event that causes your behavior or your choices. It's your thoughts about the event that make a difference. So you can have any event that happens, but it's your thoughts about the event that make a difference. Then when there's any situation or event, you have a belief about that. And now belief is a thought, just like all the other thoughts, but a belief is a more powerful and long-lasting thought. Actually, you can also think of a belief as being like the engine of a train. And this engine is leading the little cars along behind the train, and those little cars represent your thoughts. So you can see belief is here that you have in this situation and the resulting thoughts about the belief. And then all of these different thoughts you have create feelings, and then the feelings lead to behavior, which leads to the consequences of whatever your choices are of behavior. So I'm going to tell you a little example of a person who might have one belief and how this cycle works for them, and a person who might have an opposing belief. So if we say the situation is the pandemic, and I think this is a very significant one to look at for all of us, because this pandemic has affected all of us, but in different ways, because we all have different beliefs. So on the one hand, you could say, my belief is I'm old. How much more life and time do I have left? They say these vaccines are going to take years, or we're going to have to be careful for years. And so I'm pretty doomed. I'm old. I always have bad luck with everything. Nothing seems to turn out. I can't control the bad things, and I might end up sick. I'm old. I might even die. So I might never get to see my family again. I might not get to see my grandkids again. So these are some of the thoughts you have by having the basic belief that you're old and that you're not going to be able to get through this pandemic. That might be the belief, and all these other things or thoughts you might have as a result of having that belief. And so the feelings you might have are hopeless, stressed, depressed, upset. You might feel powerless. And so what kind of behaviors might you have based on that belief? Well, there's a possibility of different behaviors. One of your thoughts could be, why even try? Why not just go ahead and live my life now? Because if this is all there is, I'm just going to go out and do whatever I want. And if you had that belief, is your behavior going to be to wear a mask or to social distance or to do any of those things? Probably not. Your belief, if you have that kind of belief, you might result in risky behavior. And then the consequences of that, well, we don't really know. You could get by with it, Or then again, they could be more dire consequences. Now let's go back and let's change this belief, because you can try to change your thoughts, but if you try to change your thoughts without changing the belief, the old thoughts will start all creeping back in again. So let's go and let's put a different belief out here. Okay, this is temporary. I've been through lots of hard times in my time, and I've made it through all of them. And so your belief could be, I'm going to beat this pandemic. And part of your thinking could be, okay, I'm facing a virus. I've faced things before. What can I do? What do I have the power to do? I can educate myself on it. I can learn what I can do to keep myself safe. I can, educate myself. I can do the right thing for myself. I can keep myself safe. I can control what I do. I can't control what anybody else does, but I can control what I do. And so you have all of the thoughts that come from the belief that you're going to beat this thing, and that, yes, I am going to see my grandkids again. It may not be right away. It may not be a few months, but I'm still going to be here to be able to see them. And then these feelings that you might have would be, you feel powerful, you feel in control, you feel optimistic, and you feel hopeful. And then your behavior might be, when one of your thoughts is, I'm going to take care of myself and educate myself, your behavior might be to only, to wear masks, to social distance, to follow guidelines as you know them. Now, this, with you having a belief, you may have different thinking with these beliefs. But this is kind of an example of what a person might think or not think. And so we won't tell you either way that your belief is wrong or right. We just say, is this belief working for you? And the way you know if it's working, sometimes a belief will work for us on the short term, but not over time. So the main thing to focus on is this belief working for me over time. Okay, so the next slide. So what is a belief? We go into a little more depth about what a belief is, because although belief is a thought, it's a more powerful and long-lasting thoughts. So belief is your thoughts about how things are or how things should be, or how the world is or how the world should be. They occur in many different types of situations. Now, I think that all of you can really relate to the thing about the belief. I always hate to bring up politics, and usually in my groups, I don't really talk about politics, but I just say, this is abortion, politics. These are all things that people usually know right away what their belief is. They don't have to think about it, they just know. And so as a result, these are easy beliefs to find, but sometimes you can have hidden beliefs, beliefs that you gain through growing up and till the age you are now. And so you base your beliefs on what happened to you and on what happens to other people that you see. And you may change some of them, but many of them you don't. I always like this term that we say, a belief can be at the back of your head like a stick of dynamite, and something can trigger or light that, and then all of a sudden it comes into effect, and you have thoughts based on that belief that lead to your feelings, that lead to your behavior, and that lead to consequences. So what we do in our lessons is we usually take each one of these areas and we teach more in depth about beliefs We help people find their beliefs. And then we also teach, more in depth about feelings, about behavior, and about consequences, and we have lessons that go around the whole cycle. I know I had an offender in one of my groups, and he had a belief that whenever anybody picks a fight with you or does anything physically towards you, or even looks like they're going to do something, that you have to take them out because they're going to come back and get you later. Now, you can imagine what this guy's record was like. He had tons of batteries and getting into fights. And so when he was in our group and he figured out he had this belief, then what we say when we do find a belief is we say to the person, where did this belief come from? Well, he developed this belief because he was taught by one of his uncles who had been in prison for a long time. He was taught that I'm sorry, I got a little bit off the track here. So anyway, your immediate, intermediate rules, assumptions, and the expectations you have are all involved in your belief. So the next slide. Okay, so there's Robert Benet, who has a program, Gaining Control. And Robert Benet has a really good description of beliefs and how they work. A belief window is the lens through which you see the world. So it's like this, and in the book he shows a guy with a belief window attached to his head, and he says, this is a two-way window. We've written our personal beliefs, our most powerful beliefs. Some are based on proof and some are not, but we hold on to them. And we behave in ways that are consistent with what's on this belief window. And so when we see the world, we see it through this belief window that we've formed throughout our lives. And so beliefs spark thoughts that influence how we feel and behave. Now, the interesting thing is, we may have different belief windows, like, each person has their own that they've developed. But if my belief window is entirely opposite of your belief window, then sometimes that can cause a problem because the person says, well, I know this is true. Actually, I heard in this tape that said, the woman said, this is true because I believe it. And on the tape, it says, the person says, no, it's because you believe it that it's true. Or it's because you believe it that it's true. Not it's true and I believe it because it's true. So I thought that was a really good way to describe it. So what is next? Next slide. So we want to evaluate our thoughts. And so the thoughts, I think, appear one after the other on the slide. So if you can put them all on, I think there's more to this. I know there is. Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. No. Yeah. Thanks. So evaluating our thoughts. Since we believe our thoughts as they come through our head, and we also hold on and believe our beliefs, we have to start asking ourselves, is this thought completely or always true? And if this thought is not true, and then we say, what is my evidence that this thought is true? And if it's not true, even if I am convinced it's true, is it helpful? And if it's not true, then maybe I want to change it. And you have the ability to change your thinking, and you have the ability to change your beliefs. And I always do this little exercise in group. I give somebody a rock and I say, this is your belief. And so you hold on to that. And so now I'm going to come along and I'm going to take that belief away from you. And they're like, no, you're not going to take this belief away. This is my belief. I'm not giving this up. So nobody else can take your belief away from you, no matter what they say or what they do. They cannot. Only you can decide this belief or this thought isn't working for me and I want to give it up, or I want to revise it, or I want to change it. And you have the power to do that. But you only can do it if you know what your thoughts and beliefs are, and especially the ones that cause you trouble. So I like the thing is, even if this thought is true, is it helpful to me? Does it make me feel good? Does it help me reach my goals in life? And if it doesn't, then you could choose to change it or give it up. And also, is there another thought that is just as true, but is more helpful? So only until you pay attention to your own thinking in situations can you find your beliefs, and can you decide to ask yourself questions about all these things. So if you want to go to the next slide. So that involves observing your own thinking. Now, some of us are on autopilot. Some thoughts pop up causing trouble. If we could go to the people gallery view for a minute, I'd like to tell this little story and have the gallery view of people. Thank you, Maureen. Okay, so how many people with a raise of hands, okay, the speed limit on I-75 is, I believe that speed limit's 70. So by raise of hands, could everybody tell me if you go 70? Okay, we have a couple that I can see. I can't see everybody on my screen, I don't think. So we have about 3 people. Okay, the people who go over 70, 75, 80, okay? Now, if you go over the speed limit on I-70, then you have thinking that justifies and makes it okay for you to go over 70. You have some thoughts you might have are, I know where all the cops sit. Everybody else is going so fast, they're going to run over me if I don't go over 70 miles an hour. Who's going 70 miles an hour? I see there's about 3 people here that might be going 70, but most of the people flying by are going like maybe 80, 85 on 75 from Ocala to the Village, as I know. So based on that, people justify their behaviors by what's in their mind. We wouldn't do anything unless we made it okay in our heads. So now, what if you see a cop up ahead? The people that are going over 75, what do? You slow down, okay? So you slow down, then you see the cop is busy with someone else. I bet you 9 times out of 10, people speed up because you know that you're going to get by with this. And so whatever your thoughts are that make it okay, you know you're going to do that. So now if you're somebody who gets a lot of tickets, if your consequences is to get a lot of tickets, then you may decide, I need to change this thinking. And actually, you know, your belief, your underlying belief is that you could have a belief, nobody goes 70. And, you know, there's nobody who goes 70. That's just like a suggested limit. you know. So if you have that belief, then your thinking will justify it. So if you could come back to the slides again. And the automatic thought you might have, you know, our autopilot, sometimes we have the same thoughts that go through our head over and over. And so we're on autopilot. We think the same kind of thoughts in similar situations. And so we don't stop to identify these thoughts or to consider if they're based on facts. In fact, we allow our thoughts to control us rather than us controlling them. Well, I just thought it, so it must be true. And so I have to do this. I have to feel this way, and I have to do this. So I like this thing that we always say, we're in the driver's seat, but our thoughts take us places we don't want to go. And we are aware of what we're thinking, and sometimes we're convinced we are right. And sometimes we even find out that we're not right. But then when we're in a similar situation again, the old thoughts may come back in, and we may be affected in this. We may have the same thinking that leads to the same behavior and consequences. So next slide. How thoughts affect feelings. So here we have these beliefs, and we have the thoughts that come from the beliefs. And so each thought that we have creates a feeling inside of us. I mean, if you get up in the morning and you go in the next room, you're not usually, unless you have more severe psychiatric issues, you're not usually angry. You don't usually walk around angry. So if you're angry in a situation, it's because you had a thought that made you feel angry. And I know when people are having trouble identifying their thinking, sometimes we have to start with feelings and work our way back to the thoughts. So we have to say, so you're feeling angry in this situation. What thought could have made you feel angry? So many people believe they don't have any control over their feelings. Well, sure, I'm unhappy I lost my job. Or sure, I'm unhappy we're in the middle of a pandemic. How can I feel any other way? But you don't have, it's the thoughts that you're having that are making you have those feelings. It's not the situations, but your thoughts about the situation that creates your feelings and your moods. So even though we don't think of thoughts as usually positive or negative, there are thoughts that make us feel better. So we might categorize those as a positive thought creates a positive feeling, and a negative thought creates a negative feeling. So a thought is, I can be successful, makes us feel optimistic or happy, whereas a thought that I'm never going to be able to do this could make us feel defeated and depressed. So feelings are not good or bad, or right or wrong. We can try to turn them off, but if our thoughts remain, they will return. We can't go in and just say, don't feel that way, if you're having the same thoughts, because you're going to eventually have those same feelings if you keep the thinking that you have. And we can learn why we have those feelings, change our thoughts, and our feelings will automatically change. And that's the way this cycle tends to work. We can't go in, you know, like in a lot of cases, you would like to change a person's behavior. Well, I don't want you to do this behavior anymore. But if we tried to make you change your behavior, you might comply for a while. But if you had the same beliefs, thoughts, and feelings, you would eventually go back to doing the same behaviors. So next slide. So how thoughts and feelings affect behavior. Behavior is what we say and do and what others can see. The causes of different behavior depends on thoughts. And, you know, thoughts are like instructions in your head telling you what to do, telling you what choices to make. And so you can have, we have like what we call the choice funnel. And so your thoughts and your beliefs can either widen your choices in a situation or they can narrow your choices. And so if you could hear a person's thoughts and you knew their belief, you could almost predict their behavior. And whereas if you see a person's behavior, you can almost figure out what their belief might be. The next slide. Okay, so now we come to counters. So here you know the thoughts that are causing trouble. You know the problems that you have as a result of your belief and thinking and feelings. So what do we do about that? Well, when we know the thoughts that cause problems, the thought that makes us feel anxious, make us feel depressed, when we know what those are and what the underlying belief is, we can go in and we can come up with counter thoughts and a counter belief. Now, when we do, we have to come up with one that's very strong. Now, a counter can be one word. It could be picturing a stop sign in your head when you start thinking those old thoughts. It can be a phrase, or it can be a whole sentence that you replace the original thinking with. There are some problems that people have, and they say that, you know, I'm never going to be able to solve this. But, and behaviors they keep doing, and they say, I'm never going to be able to change that. Well, they can change by going back and changing their thoughts, but it's even more powerful to change the belief. So if you want to come back to the full screen. Now I have a quick example I'll tell you. My son wanted to quit smoking, and he had smoked for years. So what I did is I said, okay, when are you most apt to smoke? I'm most apt to smoke when I'm in the bar with my friends and we're having drinks and we're socializing. Everybody smoked. That's back when you could smoke then. So every time he would get in that situation, he would find he was smoking, even though he was trying to quit. So I said, I know you don't believe in any of the stuff I do, which, you know, our families are the last one to listen to us, especially our kids. So I said, but the next time you're in the bar, try to pay attention to different thoughts that you have. And that way, if you put those thoughts on a card and you write them down, then we'll talk about them and we'll see what you can do. How can you change these thoughts? So he did that. You know, he wrote all his thoughts down, and he has a job that's very stressful. And so one of his thoughts was, I'm so stressed, these cigarettes are going to help my stress. And actually, after we looked at all his thinking, we figured out that one thought was really his core belief, that these cigarettes are going to take care of his stress, which was very important to him. And so when he was in this situation, he would say, oh, I'm only going to have one cigarette, and then I'll quit tomorrow. And then his thinking was, oh, everybody else is smoking. I ought to be able to smoke too. And oh, that, you know, I'm smelling the smoke. I have to just have one. And then he, you know, so he wrote down all these thoughts. So then we talked about what counters he could come up with. And so he came up with counters for all the different thoughts. But the one he couldn't come up with a counter on was the one about the stress. because he believed that so strongly. There wasn't anything we could come up with that he was going to change that belief. So we changed the thoughts, and he had a card, and he would take it to the bar with him, and he would look down at his card when he would start thinking the old thoughts, and he would look at the counter thoughts that he had come up with out of his own thinking, because it's important that somebody not tell you what counter to use. It's important that you come up with it yourself, because if you're in a high-risk situation, are you going to say, oh, what counter did they tell me I'm supposed to think? No, you're going to come up with thinking your counter thought that only you could buy into, that would be strong enough to fight against the original thought. And so he quit smoking for about 52 days, but I predicted he was probably going to start again, because he got he's an attorney, so he got a case that was a really, high profile case, and he had that belief that he hung on to that helped him with the stress. And so he started having these thoughts come from the old belief again and wiping out everything that started him smoking again. So eventually he agreed that he had to come up with something that could fight against this belief to actually quit. And so now he has quit for the last 4 years, which I think that makes me very proud that he was able to go the extra step and change the belief. So I'm not sure where we are time-wise, but that's basically, don't know if anybody has any questions or how this works.
Well, I do have a question, and then we'll open it up to the audience. So during this pandemic, can you give us some maybe counter thoughts that we could think of when we're feeling stressed about not seeing our family, or we're watching the news and we're seeing things that make us anxious? Can you give us some examples of some counter thoughts that maybe have worked for other people?
Yes, I think that, I think from what I've learned through counseling people, is the thing that's most upsetting to people is to believe that they have no control over what's happening to them. That seems to be the thing that bothers people the most. And so I think that during the pandemic, for you to say, maybe I can find a way to make contact with my family. I mean, I can still see them, and maybe not in person. I can do FaceTime with them. I can I had this happen myself. So I have my own thoughts that I had. I thought, I can find a way that I can see at least my son. And so he lives out of state, and I had to travel to do that. I thought through all the problems with flying in the airport, and I decided to drive. And so what I did was I just thought out each situation, and my son agreed to be tested before I came. And so he was negative. So we did that, and it required a lot of cooperation along the way. But now I tell myself, at least I got to see them in the summer. Now I can wait. I feel good about what I was able to do. And now I believe I have the power to keep myself safe by educating myself and doing what I need to do. And also thinking thoughts like I'm old and this might be the end of my life. I can change that to a counter of, I've lived all of these years and I've been able to get through all these things. And this isn't going to last forever. This is a temporary situation. Even if it's temporary for quite a while, it's still temporary. And I can do this. I can do this. And so just trying to go through whatever, and what you'd have to do is, I could give you some thoughts to think, but they wouldn't fit with you and your life. So the best thing you could do is to write down what is making you depressed and upset, and then finding a thought that can counter that, that works for you, that will help you feel better and help you with getting through the situation.
That's great. Thank you for that. Is there any other questions from the audience? Does anybody have any questions? We have about 10 minutes left.
Hold on, we're gonna unmute. Somebody's waving at me. So I'm asking her to unmute herself so she can ask that question.
Yes, I'm Lee Smith, and I would like to ask her to finish the story about the fellow that had feelings when people looked at them or the wrong way. He had to fight back, or he always felt that he was being looked at. And I think she started to tell the story about the uncle who was in prison.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Actually, the guy was in her group, and I give people a tool called a thinking report. And what they do is they tell a situation. So he went back and he looked at the fights that he'd been in the past. And so he took one specific fight where he really beat up somebody pretty badly and served a lot of time for it. And so we took a look at his individual thoughts, came up with the fact he had that belief. And then when I said, where did this belief come from? Then he said, oh, he kind of learned that from his uncle. And then I said, is this belief working for you? I mean, are you wanting to spend the rest of your life in jail or prison? You know, is this belief really working for you because you accept it as true and you act on it? And he decided that he was going to try to change it. So he changed this belief to something not that would sound good, but something that he could buy just as easily as the fact he changed it. And this has been several years ago. We're talking like 15 years ago that I had this guy in group. So I can't remember exactly what the belief was he changed it to, but that guy throughout the next, I know, 4 or 5 years, because I was a supervisor at that office. So I would staff cases with all of my agents, and one of my agents had his case. He never got into any more fights. He decided that belief wasn't leading him where he wanted to go, and so he decided to change it. And I thought that was remarkable that he was able to do that. And he never would have been able to do that if he would have just come in and seen his agent and she would have said, don't do this.
Yeah.
He would have still kept doing the same thing until he figured out it was beneficial to him and his life to change, is when he did.
Right. I was just wondering what his uncle had told him that made him think that way.
He said, oh, he says, you know, somebody came back and they really beat me up good. And he says, you know, whenever anything happens, these people are in these gangs. They're going to tell somebody, they're going to come back, and you may not make it next time. And so he developed this belief based on the uncle and what he told him, and he looked up to this uncle so that he believed it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Does anyone have any more questions?
Audrey?
Carolyn has one, but I've unmuted her. Go ahead, Carolyn.
Oh,
Hello. Hello. I'm struggling with really angry thoughts at my daughter-in-law for divorcing my son. And they're really driving me in the wrong direction. So do you think, I don't know how to change these beliefs. I really believe she was wrong, and I'm really in a bad place about it. How do you work yourself from the thought to the belief to deciding to change it?
I know people decide to change their beliefs for different reasons, but one of the main reasons is if your life isn't the way you want it to be, then to know that you do have the power to change that. And to know that sometimes, a belief has to cause us a lot of trouble along the way before we are convinced that we need to change. And so it depends on when you get to the point where you say, this is enough. And I'm going to take a look at the thoughts that are making me angry. And then I'm going to try to find out what this underlying belief is, because some of the things you said may just be thoughts. They may not be the foundation belief. And it's not always easy to find that foundation belief that's causing all the trouble. So you might have to try to come up with all the thoughts you have that are creating this anchor, and then before you're to the point where you're ready to change.
Would you be willing to share a little bit more about that thinking report? Meaning, here's the idea. Let's, for instance, the lady that just spoke. I'm mad at my daughter-in-law for divorcing my son. And then from there, what are her, again, I don't know how you would lay that out. So you would lay out sentence by sentence. What are you angry at? And then what does that make you feel? And what does that feeling feel like? And why do you think you have that belief and feeling? Would you be able to share that thinking report so that we could use that as a tool to kind of guide some of our feelings and thoughts right now?
Okay, so the thinking report is a form that we actually have.
Yep.
And so at the top of the form, it says situation. So I might have Caroline go back and put the last situation that came up that she ended up feeling angry and having these thoughts. So, I mean, I'm sure that she probably doesn't think about this 24 hours a day, but she may think about it a lot. But go back and pick a specific situation. Maybe she had a phone call with her, or, something happened. And so write who, what, when, and where as if you're watching a movie on situation. And then you go back to the beginning of the situation and you say, okay, the phone rang and she was on the other end. What thought went through your head? And then you say, how did that thought make you feel? And then you go to the next thing that happened. So what happened next? Well, she said this and I said that. And so what thought went through your head and how did it make you feel? And so you keep going down the line of the whole conversation and putting all the thoughts and feelings. And then you say to yourself, if you do a number of situations, you can find your belief easier than if you try to find it for one situation. So when we do group, ideally, we would have people do 8 or 9 thinking reports of all these different situations, because then it starts to become more clear as to what your belief is. And then we ask that person, what is your underlying belief? And are you willing to revise this belief in order to change the consequences that happen? Because with each of these situations, the consequence may be, I feel bad, maybe I'm not getting to see my grandkids, or, only they would know, what the consequences were of this, or I just don't feel good about myself. It doesn't make me feel good to carry around a lot of anger. Most of the time, it's, forgiving somebody else is not letting them off the hook. Forgiving them is actually taking the load off of you.
Right.
So, so that would be one of the ways we would work on it. We would have this person come up with what the foundation belief is here for sure, and then go from there.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to use this on my adult daughter who's down in Orlando doing her thing, and I'm trying to understand her behaviors in this pandemic. So I'm trying to figure out what's in her mind and why she's doing the behavior she's doing. So thank you.
There are a couple of things that come to my mind when I hear your questions. On the first question, I actually don't know what each one of the therapists, what their background or what their therapy is like. But I did see Pat, who's our leader here, shaking her head that I don't think everybody uses that approach of cognitive behavioral. The other thing that came to my mind when you were talking is, I follow Judith Beck. Judith Beck has written a number of books on cognitive therapy. And so in the late 60s, Aaron Beck, who's a psychiatrist, and her father decided that he wasn't getting anywhere with his patients as quickly as he wanted to. So he's the one that actually started, one of the pioneers. I've heard there are others, but he's the one who started with cognitive therapy with people. And he found that it was very successful and that it was a lot quicker than the traditional therapy that might take a long time to go back into childhood issues, etc. So I have been thinking cognitive so long that I can't even imagine doing things another way. So, when I first learned this process in '92, I used it on myself. And so I think that if you can use something on yourself, then that helps you with using that practice with other people. And the way I used it on myself is I worry a lot about my sons. And so consequently, when they were going out as young people, if they weren't home or they didn't answer my call right away, I would start worrying. I would go so far as to call the highway patrol because I knew something might have happened to them. And so I might even text one of their friends and say, have you seen him? Is he okay? But this doesn't do a lot for your relationship with your son in the long run. So, this wasn't working for me, but I figured out my core belief came back to the time when my oldest son was about 3. My sister was killed in a car accident, and she was 7 years younger than me. And that made such an impression on me. And I never will forget going through the night of wondering where she was and what was going on. And that made such an impression on me that I carried that belief. And I know how hard it is to change. That's why when I have people in group, I say, even when you decide to change yourself, it's not easy, but it can be done. And I will say I've gotten better over the years, but I still have those old thoughts return because I have a son who lives alone. And the minute I don't get in touch with him, I start those old thoughts of, oh, something happened to him. He lives at home. He could fall down and hit his head and die and nobody would even know, so once you get on a roll with this thinking, it's really difficult to stop it. So I've tried to go back and do counters to these thoughts And I do pretty well most of the time. But you know, these old thoughts are going to still be back in your head and are still going to be involved in your choices and your behavior.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. We've learned so much today. As you can tell, we've gone over in time and I don't want to get cut off at the end, but you have been amazing. Thank you for all the tools that you've shared with us. I'm definitely going to try this because there's all these different things that are going on in our head, and I really appreciate your time, your energy, and your expertise. So thanks for sharing with us, Elaine, today. Thanks from TLC. Here's the information. Bonnie, do you want to share this with us real quick?
Sure. Just quickly, I'll say, please go to our website. We have a lot of, excuse me, a lot of great information there, including we'll have a handout on the thinking report that'll go with this presentation, or we'll send that out to you with the video. Anyway, we just want you to see that we do have a website, a phone number. If someone needs particular attention with one-on-one counseling, we can talk to you about that. And then there's a donate button on our website should you wish to donate to us. Thank you, everyone.
And these are some of the upcoming events that we have coming up. Synexus is going to be talking to us about clinical trials for Alzheimer's disease, savvy caregiver training. So people who are caregivers, this is a free training and it's a six-week course. We're going to be talking about medical planning and asset protection with an attorney, dementia care do and don'ts. That'll be with Jackie from the Alzheimer's Family Organization. And coming up next year, we're going to have special guest Teepa Snow will be doing some presentations, and she's a world-renowned Alzheimer's and dementia expert. And again, these are all free. If somebody's interested in getting involved, you can go to my website and sign up for these classes. And again, my company is Your Key to Senior Living Options. I'm here in the Villages. I help seniors find independent, assisted or memory care communities and resources to stay in their home if they want to age in place. So thanks again for your time. And again, TLC, big hugs to all of you. Thank you so much for all the knowledge that you're bringing to us. We're getting healthier every day and trying to stay sane in this insane world. So thank you for all the tools. You've been a godsend. So everybody stay safe and we'll see you next time.